Hi guys, welcome back. I'm Peyton. I'm an aspiring author who recently finished her first draft of her current WIP called Project Old Lovers. And today we're going to talk about how to finally finish that first draft if you've never finished a first draft before. This is a video I really wanted to do because this is my first draft that I've ever finished. And I have the physical printout personal use copy right here. So exciting. I've been over the moon about it. If you haven't seen that video, I also plug on where you can find a tutorial on how to do that. So now that I've finally figured out the sauce to do this, I want to help you do this. And my first tip is about mindset. So I truly believe mindset was the number one reason why I couldn't finish a first draft before. And I've been trying to write books since I was like 11 through high school and college. And I would often let life just get in the way. I'd say, oh, I'm too busy with school. But the thing is, you're always going to be busy. So you do have to prioritize and you need that mindset shift. I used to have this very naive belief, and I've mentioned this quite often on my channel, I feel like, that famous best-selling authors were just so much more talented at writing than the rest of us and storytelling that they would just spit out their books in one go, and that editing was all about grammar. And for those of you who are more well-versed in story writing, story craft, or who are further along on your writing journeys, you're probably laughing because you know that's not the case. That's not true. Many authors take years and years to write their books. One of my favorites is the fact that Donna Tartt takes like 10 years to write her books, and they're fabulous. And now that I'm older and I realize there are these phases to writing a book, I'm almost embarrassed that I used to think that, but it's a necessary mindset shift that we all need to go through. So don't put pressure on yourself to write super fast. Don't put pressure on yourself to write this perfect story or to have everything plotted, to know every single detail about your story. That's part of the fun. That mindset shift is going away from perfectionism and really going along for the journey is what I want to say. And I roll my eyes. It's so hard to do that. It's something that's often said, but it's really, really difficult to just go along with the journey and enjoy your story. Now this leads me to my next tip number 2, which is to build your toolkit. Now that you're taking yourself seriously, now that you're not being too hard on yourself, not being too much of a perfectionist, you need to make sure you have the tools to succeed, set yourself up for success. And I think I'll make another more in-depth video on this and my toolkit that I am still developing, but the overall basics of what I mean for this. So this may include a word processor like Google Docs, Microsoft Word, Scrivener. Readsy apparently has a really great free tool as well. A notebook, so maybe you want to type it by hand, maybe you want to jot down ideas in that dedicated notebook. Note cards, colored pens, highlighters, maybe craft books and writing techniques, word count trackers. Your toolkit's going to look different just depending on what kind of project you're working on and who you are as a writer. Tip number 3 is having mood boards, using Pinterest, having a playlist. And this does kind of go to that build a toolkit kind of a thing, but I do want to clarify how life-changing these things can be for getting that first draft done, that those particular things, even though it's not getting words on the page, it's not a waste of time. And if you're not familiar with my channel and my content, I do have videos on these topics. Tip number 4 was the biggest game changer for me, and that was to study story structure. Looking back, I kind of can't believe that I did not learn about this in high school, that I didn't learn about this even in my college writing classes. I wasn't a writing major, wasn't a creative writing major. I took a handful of them that I could, but it's mind-blowing to me that no one ever said anything about story structure. And if you're not familiar with story structure, you might have heard the terms Save the Cat, 7-point story structure, 3-act, the hero's journey. These are all different types of story structure, and I highly suggest that you go and study these and try some out in your stories, in your plotting. It will change your life. Tip number 5 is, once you have that story structure you would like to use, write an outline to it. Even if you don't know all the details, even if you're a pantser, just try to write the barest of bones skeleton for your story. That way, when you're in the thick of writing that first draft, you don't have to stress about what's going to happen next. Even if that outline ends up changing, you still have something to write and go off of and see if that idea actually works on the page or not. Which leads me to tip number 6. Don't be afraid to change your outline. Please give yourself permission. If something isn't working as you write, if you come up with a new idea, later on, let it change. Keep it around in case you need to go back to it. But I think one of the worst things you can do for your story is to force yourself to stick with it when you can see that it's not working. Your stories are like a living, breathing thing. Don't force them into boxes. Don't force them into corners or cages. Tip number 7 was also a huge life-changing thing for me. And this is to tell yourself you're going to write at least 3 different drafts. The first one is to make it exist. You're telling yourself the story, the bad first draft. The second one is a developmental edit. You're going to make it make sense. You're going to make it good. You're going to find your plot holes. You're going to find out where your characters need development, where their character arcs are weak, and you're going to make them stronger, and any other issues that need ironing out. And then that third draft is going to be a line edit. So this is when you're finally going to focus on making it pretty, focusing on the prose, flowy language, really focus and hone in on your author voice. You may find out for your first draft, your first story, that you may need to do more passives than just 3, but just get into that mindset. This goes back to tip number 1. Get into that mindset shift of you're going to take this into chunks. You're going to break it down into a smaller project that's more manageable. You're going to have more of a focus, and that just, it takes off so much pressure. It makes your story better. It makes you a better writer. You actually have a plan now. If you've never finished a first draft, please at least try once this 3-pass rule, 3-draft rule. Tip number 8 is to just sit down and write the dang book. Like, for the love of God, get your butt in the chair and put words on the page. This is when tracking your words helps. This is when crazy word count challenges help, like trying to write 5,000 words in one day when you've never done that before. Telling yourself, I'm going to write for an hour, 5 days a week, or I'm going to write every weekend, or trying new things like writing sprints. This is when you use those techniques, those tools, those like games, if you will, to get your butt in the chair and just write. When it came to actually writing in the past, I was my own worst enemy. I would get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning in high school because everyone else was still asleep. The house was quiet. I turned on my little twinkly lights, but I wouldn't get anywhere. Even though I was putting in the time, I was scheduling it and actually showing up at that scheduled time, I still wasn't getting anywhere because I would fall into these rabbit holes of writing a sentence, deleting it, rewriting it, or I wouldn't know exactly what a room looked like, smelled like, what objects were on the table. And I would fall into this rabbit hole of research and looking on Pinterest for items while I was trying to write that draft. It slowed me down so much. And that time that I had set aside would run out so fast. All of a sudden, it would be time for me to get up, get around, eat breakfast, go to school. And I was just wasting time. So not only do you need to show up, you need to not self-edit as you write. We could make that its own tip if you really want to, but I just want to clump it into write that dang book. If you don't know a certain detail, do not research in that moment. Make yourself a note, write it down, highlight it in your draft, write a large TK, go back and search for that later and figure it out later. Figure it out in a developmental draft. All right, so that is my last tip on how to write your first draft. Those are all things that I used to finally finish my first draft, and now it's time for you to go and write yours. So if you found any of those tips helpful, if you have anything else to add for other writers who might come across this video and read the comments, drop them below, help each other out. I love how supportive and friendly the AuthorTube community is. And until next time, cheers.